Well, hello out there in real country. You are listening to WMOQ 92.3 on your FM dial. It is high noon, and that means it's time for the Marc McMain Show. I'm Bob Furr, filling in for Jeff Hood today, who normally fills in for Mark on Wednesdays. Some of you may know Jeff, was injured in a bicycle accident, struck by a car, actually. Pardon me again. Alleged drunk driver. So Jeff's going to be okay as we understand it, but he's got a recovery road ahead of him. So we send out prayers and best wishes for Godspeed to a speedy recovery for Jeff and wish him there. So with me as always, the one and only Chastity Stewart. Chastity, twice in 1 day, man. People are going to talk. How great is that?
I'm excited. I'm super excited. And we're talking barbecue today.
We are not just talking barbecue.
That's right.
We have a plethora of barbecue in front of us here today.
I mean, it looks like the Dillard house here.
It's pretty. It's pretty good. So yesterday I kicked off a 5-part series called Tuesdays 250 by 50s, sharing America's story every Tuesday, 50 years at a time, leading up to the 250 July 4th weekend, the semi-quincentennial Declaration of Independence, and that's the last time I'm going to try to use that word. But today we're talking about something that is decidedly American, and that is barbecue.
Yes.
Now, Americans did not invent barbecue. They did invent, however, American barbecue. What an American thing, right? We'll take your invention, we'll call it American and make it our own thing. It's a set of specific barbecue traditions from the American South, and they kind of combine Native American, European, and enslaved African American culture. So, Chastity, what are your thoughts on barbecue?
Oh, I love it. And the sweet barbecue flavor, my favorite. So if you smell smoke, don't worry. It's just barbecue talk today with Bob.
Right. It'd be great if we had one of those smell-o-vision things where, like, you could get the smell of this studio right now through, and look online later on our Facebook post. You'll see what we have in front of us here. So, I love barbecue. I don't expect to end up facing execution at any point in my life, but if I do, barbecue is definitely going to be my last meal, and it's going to be very specific barbecue. Now, I'm going to say right off the bat, I'm disqualifying any local barbecue joints because I don't want to play any favorites, but this is what the meal would be. Smoked turkey from Southern Soul on St. Simon's. Yeah. Brunswick stew from a place called Rick's in Dublin, Georgia. Yeah. Baked beans from Fat Matt's in Atlanta. Ooh. And the ribs can only come from one place, and that is my father-in-law, Paul Brown's kitchen. Ooh. The man makes the best ribs that the world has ever known. But we've got some great barbecue right here in this area, of course. What's up your way, Chastity? What are your favorite barbecue haunts up there, or what's up your way?
Well, we used to have an old school barbecue place that we would go to called Blackstock's. And so they have been out of business now for many years. So, but it smells exactly like what I'm used to smelling. So I cannot wait to dig in right now.
Well, I think we've already kind of dug in here a little bit. So again, I didn't include any favorites, but we've got two great barbecue restaurants. The focus of my show is kind of Madison and Morgan County. So we've got two great barbecue restaurants in Madison, and I'm going to go through them first alphabetically, which is Brookshire Barbecue and Crow's Barbecue. I want to thank them both first for letting me use their smokers as backdrops for the social media posts promoting the show. But what I really want to thank them for is bringing us both the barbecue lunch that we are enjoying during the show. We've got smoked chicken salad, collard greens, macaroni and cheese, baked beans, coleslaw, potato salad, Brunswick stew, barbecue sandwiches, ribs, cornbread, you name it. If it goes with barbecue, it is sitting here in front of us. So I may be radioing with my mouth full today, Chastity. So let's talk a little bit about these great places. I want to give them a great shout out here. Let's go by tenure this time. So Crow's, 35 years in Madison with a family barbecue history and tradition that goes back to the 60s. So they've been smoking it for a while. Let's put it that way.
Doing it right.
Yeah, let's put that on a T-shirt. So really kind of an old school hole in the wall barbecue joint. That's how they describe themselves. That's what I was given as the description. This is my favorite. We're real stick burners. They don't use any gas, just wood-fired smoke in history. Those are those words. I thought that was great. And the last phrase I got was cook everything how our grandfathers taught us. I thought that was a great expression as well. So you will find Crow's at 1320 Eatonton Road in Madison. They're open 11 to 8 on Thursdays and Fridays, 11 to 6:30 on Saturdays. They've got a full barbecue menu, catering. You can check them out online. excuse me, at crowsbarbecue.com, or order by phone, walk up to the counter or window, and just walking up to the place is kind of an experience. And then Brookshire, they're kind of a newcomer in town. They had their grand opening in January 2025. They're in a cool caboose-looking building that's right by the railroad in the heart of the historic district, so kind of a great ambiance there. They sit where the industrial corridor used to be in Madison. So this was this long line of brick, 2-3-story buildings, too deep, gins, mills, factories, tanneries, warehouses. And when we take people on the tour on the trolley, sometimes Brookshire will be cooking while I'm talking about the industrial corridor. And so I make a joke that Brookshire smells just a little bit better than those tanneries and those mills and those gins probably did. So you'll find Brookshire at 270 West Washington Street in the heart of Madison's historic district. They are open 11 to 9 Wednesday through Saturday and 11 to 6 on Sundays. They got a full barbecue menu. They do specials from time to time, catering. You can check them out online at brookshirebarbecue.com. I got some barbecue stuck in my throat here. You can order by online, by phone. Goodness gracious! Order on phone, by line, or at the counter. You can also use DoorDash. I think it's really great that Madison's lucky to have not just one barbecue place, but 2 barbecue places, and they really kind of offer a completely different barbecue experience. So we want to check them both out. Mm-hmm. So, Chastity, have you been to either, and have you gotten a chance to check either of those places out?
I haven't, but I definitely will be a very frequent visitor after today.
You're checking them out right now, right? You're checking them out right now here on the show.
So, yeah, good food, good company, and good radio. So, we know Mark's out there listening and meeting voters across the District 46. So we'll keep his seat warm for him.
Mark picked a bad day not to be stopping by the studio. So you're listening to the Marc McMain Show, WMOQ 92.3 on your FM dial. We are talking all things barbecue, and we're about to bite into things. Listen, Chastity, I hope this doesn't rub you the wrong way, but there's going to be a lot of barbecue puns today. I'm just going to warn you that right now.
I like the spice.
All right. Oh, nice. Here we go. I love it when you get on board with it. Our guest today is Dr. Trey Wellborn. He is an assistant professor, history of Georgia, professor history, Georgia College and State University. He's also the co-founder and co-collaborator of Georgia Barbecue Trails, which you can find at georgiabbqtrails.com. And I should mention that with those 2 websites, when I said Crow's Barbecue and Brookshire Barbecue, it is Crow's, CROESBBQ.com, and Brookshire, BROOKSHIR, BBQ.com. So, Trey, welcome to the show.
Thank y'all for having me. Really excited to be here, and already got a full belly.
So we always like to start by getting to know our guests. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Help us get to know Trey Wellborn.
So I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina. Grew up in Northeast Florida, Fernandina Beach, Florida, on Amelia Island. That's where I graduated high school, and then went to Clemson University. So I'm a loyal Tiger, but I got my PhD at the University of Georgia. So all you dog fans, don't bark at me.
So whenever I'm with a real historian, Chastity, I always feel a little bit of, I don't know what you call it, credibility envy or whatever. So it's like playing hockey. I grew up a pond skater. I mean, I'm not bad, but playing hockey with all these guys who some of these guys played professional, like Southern Professional Hockey Division I. So whenever I get around an actual historian, like did a dissertation and stuff like that, it's a little intimidating. So I'm gonna try to hold.
Hey, well, I think you're a historian.
Well, I like to think that too.
I think so.
So because I've got such an interest in history, though, let's dive into your history background, Trey. Tell us a little about what are your areas of focus? How did you become interested in them? Just tell us a little bit about the historian, Trey Wellborn.
So I mostly study the Civil War era in American history. So I'm a U.S. historian, mostly a cultural historian. So I'm interested in cultural values and sort of how those shape people's identities and who they think they are, who they say they are. And so that's the main focus. But increasingly, as I've done that, as a teacher especially, I've gotten more and more into food as a major part of who we are, both as a culture and as individuals. And so that's a big part of what I'm doing now, especially in my classrooms.
So I'm glad, being that you're from Charleston, it was refreshing to hear you refer to as the Civil War instead of the War of Northern Aggression.
Oh yeah, we're anti-lost cause over here.
So let me ask you this: I think it's interesting to I always ask people, like when we have people on, politicians, whatever, what do they do, right? Like we had people on the Secretary of State. Okay, I think a lot of people don't know what the Secretary of State Georgia does. So what does a historian do? What are the different activities you're involved in as a historian?
So at Georgia College, we're the public liberal arts school in the university system of Georgia. So we're a public institution, but we're also a liberal arts institution, which means we're a very teaching-centric school. So faculty that work at Georgia College really value what happens in the classroom and their engagement with students. And so that's really the bulk of how we're evaluated on an annual basis, what we're doing in our classrooms, how we're engaging students and sort of making them think critically and sort of communicate and all the things that come with a liberal arts degree. But we're also researchers and sort of scholars, and so balancing those two things. I think the best teachers are active researchers, and the best researchers are people who can then teach that to people who haven't been privy to the same information that you've delved into. And so that's sort of the balance I try to strike as a teacher and a scholar.
It was a great interaction I had the other day, Chastity. I met up with Trey at the Morgan County Historical Society annual meeting, and was talking about a woman who kind of gave me a hard time about the tour and asked me if I'd ever read Sherman's memoirs, and I'm like, yeah, twice. And Trey was standing there with one of his former students, right? And he was like, I remember when you made me read that Sherman's memoir. Like, it was just such a great, it was one of those interactions between a teacher and a student where you just saw, man, thank you for making me learn. Thank you for helping me, understand. So that was really cool. Now, when I read your background, one thing jumped out right at me, and that is, this is what Trey's dissertation was called. Are you ready for this, Chastity? Drinking, Fighting, and Praying, the Southern White Male in the Civil War Era. Let's just go ahead and get into that.
So, thank you to my advisor, Steve Berry at Georgia, for allowing me to get away with that title for my dissertation. The editors, that has since turned into my first book, which is called Dueling Cultures, Damnable Legacies. And the press didn't let me keep that title. But, I used to joke that my dissertation was only partly autobiographical. I'm not much of a fighter. But my research that was part of that dissertation and eventually became my first book is all about white Southern identity and sort of the pro-slavery and then post-war sort of reaction to Reconstruction. It's all about how white Southerners define themselves and try to sort of hold what they think is the essence of the South together during the Civil War era.
And I will say, having studied American history and having been in all 50 states and spent time in every part of the country, there's no other part of the country that has the sense of regional identity that the South does, in terms of that. And not just regional identity for themselves, but regional identity for other regions. Like, there is no, in my vernacular growing up in the lower Hudson Valley of upstate New York, there's no comparable word to Yankee. You know what I mean? Like, Southerner doesn't really match that, and, so it's why the SEC is such a big deal in college football. I mean, I definitely, every part of the country, the Northeast, the Midwest, SoCal, everything, they all have their identities, but nobody has the sense of regional identity. And then even within those regions, there's regional identity, like the Louisiana regional identity, and the Texas regional identity is really, really kind of interesting.
I think we call that Southern pride. A little bit.
And I think the subregions in the South are as fascinating, sort of the complexity of the South, once you dig in, are as fascinating as sort of the outside view of the South and how the South presents itself to other regions.
Yeah, it's
once you dig in, it's complex.
Yeah, and having looked at it from the outside, it's a mixture of both, misunderstanding and validity. So last question before we go to commercial break. How did you get into the food part of it? Like, what took you down the path of the food?
So I'll give the short answer to this. The longer answer is my great-grandmother owned a restaurant for 60-some-odd years, started in 1946 in Summerville, South Carolina. And so I grew up in that restaurant and grew up learning from the ladies that worked in the back alongside my great-grandmother and my grandmother, her daughter. And so that was the initial hook. I've always been around Southern food. It was a classic kind of meat and three. As a historian, it was when I got to Georgia College. I really Craig Pascoe he chaired the committee that hired me, and he was already doing a lot of work on barbecue and Southern foodways, and I just wanted to be a part of it. So I started tagging along, and it kind of led to me becoming more and more involved.
And America's kind of unique in that, I mean, not all really developed nations are this way, but, food not being, I guess, a necessity, you know what I mean? Like we don't realize, we take it so for granted, oh man, I moved from Atlanta to Madison. Now there's only like 5 or 6 restaurant choices. Welcome to first world problems, so you're listening to Marc McMain Show, Real Country 92.3 WMOQ. Bob Furr filling in for Jeff Hood, who normally fills in for Mark on Wednesdays. Shout out to Jeff for a speedy recovery. We're talking all things barbecue with Dr. Trey Wilburn, Assistant Professor of History, Georgia College and State University, and also co-founder and co-collaborator of Georgia Barbecue Trails. We are about to serve up some great barbecue knowledge, but first we're going to serve it with a side of commercials.
I chuckled at a cartoon that showed a news conference by a United States Senator who announced that he was divorcing his family so he could spend more time with politics. We may laugh, but the truth is many people make that statement every day. Maybe not with words, but with their actions. In fact, if a politician retires from his work to spend more time with his family, it becomes the lead story, met with cynicism on the evening news, while the one who rejects his family advancing his career is commonplace. God tells us we should work hard to the glory of God, but He has clearly shown that we must have priorities. A relationship with God first, and family follows that. What does your focus tell you about your priorities? The Bible says that we have brought nothing into this world and we can take nothing out of it. It's good to focus on the things that last, like putting God first, and then family, and then people all around us that God loves. This is Bryant Wright, speaking right from my heart.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org and click television to watch our TV spots.
When you walk through the doors of Campton Restaurant, you're not just here for a meal, you're part of a tradition. I'm 4th generation owner Josh Parker, and for nearly 40 years, families in Walton County and surrounding areas have gathered around our tables to share stories, laughter, and good Southern cooking. From crispy fried chicken to heart-healthy daily specials, there's always a plate waiting with your name on it. We're open Tuesday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. and 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays. So come on by, make yourself at home, and experience Campton Restaurant, where family tradition meets every meal.
It's family fun every Saturday night at the Winder Barrel Speedway in Winder. Gates open at 4 p.m. and the green flag drops at 7 p.m. Don't miss the excitement of the greatest show on dirt as drivers buckle up, get door to door and bumper to bumper that take that checkered flag. It's the Winder Barrel Speedway, 330 Donahue Road in Winder. Call 770-867-6327 or go to winderbarrelspeedway.com. It's the place to be on Saturday night.
All right, welcome back to the Marc McMain Show, Real Country. Listen to WMOQ 92.3 on your FM dial. We are ready to serve up a healthy portion of barbecue knowledge with Dr. Trey Wilburn, Assistant Professor of History, Georgia College and State University, and co-founder with Dr. Pascoe of Georgia Barbecue Trails. So let's follow up on our last question, got into food, took an off-ramp into barbecue. How did that happen, and the particular focus on barbecue?
Yeah, so Craig Pascoe was already doing some consulting and research for an exhibit that was at the Atlanta History Center called Barbecue Nation, which had been long process. They had actually sort of generated this idea like a decade before it actually came out, and I think it was 2018 when that exhibit finally went live. And so that was about the time I started at Georgia College. And so I just started going along with him on some of his road trips because they were just collecting information from historic barbecue places in Georgia and interviewing pit masters and getting sound bites and talking points to include in this exhibit. And that was kind of how it started. And then from there, barbecue, everybody, especially in the South, is interested in barbecue as sort of one of the recognizable regional foods. So it was an easy sell for students. It was an easy sell for stuff like this. So it just became kind of a natural way to talk about Southern history and Southern culture.
Okay, two takeaways from that. First of all, I consider it one of the great tragedies of my life that I was today years old when I found out there are career opportunities in barbecue consulting. That would have been a path that I wish I had definitely pursued. And then, I forgot the other one, so we'll just move on. So tell us a little bit about this collaboration you have with Dr. Pasco and the Georgia Barbecue Trails. I checked out your website, but just tell us what it's all about, what it's intended to do, how it came about, and all that cool stuff.
Yeah, so the site was really a spin-off of that exhibit, because that exhibit was really, it just ran for a year at the Atlanta History Center, and there's so much more that didn't make it into the exhibit. And we're like, well, what do we do with all this great stuff, all these great stories, all these great communities and families that we had collected stories from? And so a website made a lot of sense, because it was a place to kind of permanently publicly archive a lot of that, but also it was adaptable. We could add to it. We could sort of change the format that we were presenting some of that material. And so it initially began as a map, just to try to map as many of the barbecue places in Georgia as possible. And then from there it went more toward continuing to collect these stories and record them for posterity.
So first, I remember what I was going to say, and that is about the barbecue. It just occurred to me, you know what I've never heard anybody say? No, I don't like barbecue. Yeah. Like, I've heard people say they don't like fish. I've heard people say they don't like a lot of things. I've never heard anyone say, maybe vegetarians probably aren't too big on it. Yeah. But, and I got to ask, how many barbecue joints are there in Georgia?
Well, that's a running tally. Because especially after COVID, at one point there were well over 200 barbecue places across the state.
At least one per county.
After COVID, that number went down, and some places have opened in a different format, either takeout only or more abbreviated hours, and some had to shutter their doors for various reasons after that. So probably now, I would guesstimate, I haven't done the tally in a while, but probably still close to 150.
And what constitutes your barbecue place? Like, you can't just have a barbecue sandwich on the menu, right? No. Like, when do you cross over the line, and do you have to have barbecue in your name, or how does that work?
To me, barbecue, the way we define it for the website was barbecue's got to be a regular part of the menu. It can't just be we do barbecue as a special. It's got to be on the menu on a weekly basis. It doesn't have to be the only thing on the menu. It can be, a soul food place or a meat and three, but barbecue's got to be a part of the equation on a consistent basis.
You're listening to the Marc McMain Show. Bob Furr here filling in for Jeff Hood on this Wednesday. On the best show ever, because we are talking about barbecue. We are eating barbecue. It is barbecue madness here at WMOQ.
This segment is so good, it should come with a side of coleslaw.
Nice. Very nice. Getting kind of saucy over there,
I'm
Chastity.
Working on it.
All right.
Trying to keep up with you.
So listen, I love barbecue, but I didn't grow up with it. In fact, where I come from, barbecue is not something you eat. It's something that you do. Barbecue to us was a cookout. I got exposed to it on Wagons West, that trip that I always talk about, that my parents took me around the country. And not only did I get exposed to it, but I get exposed to all the different kinds of barbecue, right? You don't paint barbecue with one brush. See the brush there? Got one in there, a sauce brush. Gotcha. What should we know about the history of barbecue, and specifically American barbecue, Trey?
So barbecue, to me, what makes it a great way to teach history is barbecue contains all the elements that make up history. No matter where we're talking about, who we're talking about, if you study barbecue, you're studying sort of the history of diverse sets of people who come together to create community and who sort of sustain that community through, particular things, food being a major part of that because it's such a sort of daily need, right? So you kind of touched on it in the intro, but barbecue as it emerged in the United States was a combination of a lot of migratory patterns over hundreds and in some cases thousands of years. So it starts with Native American cooking techniques, and then it eventually incorporates enslaved African and Afro-Caribbean spices and sort of flavor palettes along with similar cooking techniques, and then eventually European colonizers bring the domesticated animals into the equation, primarily in the South, pigs, hogs. And so initially it's Spanish hogs, but most of the pigs that are cooked by the colonial period, especially in Georgia, are British hogs. And so that's really the basis of what we would recognize as barbecue today. It's sort of this convergence of influences in the colonial period.
And what's interesting about barbecue, it just occurred to me as you were talking, is, you always hear about people handing down recipes, right? But really, and you might have different variations in how well you cook the recipe, but it's the recipe, right? With barbecue, it's both the recipe and the technique, right? Or as they would say, there's more than one way to smoke a pig, I guess, as you would look at it. And so it's just the recipe and the technique. So let's get to this question. How many different types of barbecue are there? What are they? And what separates them? And I'll just sit back because I feel like I'm going to have time to finish my sandwich while you answer this question.
Yeah, probably. So my answer to this question is, and it's sometimes controversial because there are barbecue battle lines. People are very particular about their barbecue preferences. And it's usually what you grew up eating, whether it's your father-in-law, your brother-in-law, your grandfather, whoever it is, that's the style that you gravitate toward. And so there are innumerable styles of barbecue. Sometimes I get a little annoyed at the sauce maps that come out periodically. You'll see them posted on social media because they're never completely accurate. Because if you dig down into any one of those sauce regions, you'll find people who's like, well, I don't eat mustard barbecue. We're vinegar people in my family. And so to me, the sauce map it's a convenient way to at least break it down, but it's not a very accurate way to break down the diversity of barbecue. To me, what's more important is how you prepare it. Barbecue to me is you're smoking meat indirectly over wood. That's what John Shelton Reed, a sort of famous UNC sociologist, calls True Q. He's actually got a whole website we'll probably talk about later called trueq.org, where he's mapped out places that are still doing it the traditional way. And so to me, that's what matters most. Within that basic framework, do you. That's kind of what I always say. I like to say that I belong to the Church of Barbecue and I'm ecumenical.
Well, and sometimes it's not sauce at all, right? Isn't that part of the barbecue battlefield is if you put sauce on it, barbecue is rub, right? Yes. And I take it that I shouldn't show up at your barbecue event with a green egg, right? I'm not cooking it in a green egg.
Well, I actually have an egg. So an egg to me is you're still cooking it indirectly over wood. Okay. What I don't like are the pellet, the pellet smokers. That to me is bringing some impurities into the equation. But
so you had mentioned there's I've heard Memphis barbecue, I've heard Carolina barbecue, I've heard Texas barbecue. What is it that ultimately makes the difference between what one type of barbecue is versus another? St. Louis ribs versus whatever ribs.
Most of those regional, sub-regional distinctions either relate to the meat. So Texas barbecue, KC barbecue tends to be beef, and that historically makes sense because it's beef country, right? It's cattle country. KC is along the cattle trail. It's a major stockyard in the cattle trail from Texas to Chicago and the processing plants. So it makes sense that historically that's where beef would predominate. In the South, it's pork. Because people raised pigs. Pigs are relatively, I say, easy to raise, having never done it, but you can kind of turn them loose and they just rut for long periods of the time. So as long as you have land, you have the ability to raise pigs, and those pigs can sustain you through the winter. And so barbecue emerges out of those agricultural processes, and hog killing time in the winter grew out of necessity, and barbecue grew out of that. You killed the hogs and smoked or preserved the meat, salted the meat in winter because the meat was less likely to spoil in the South if you did it when the weather was cold. And so barbecue, to feed all the people who are helping you in your neighborhood, in your community at that sort of crucial moment in the agricultural cycle, that's what you do. You take a couple of those hogs and you throw them over a pit, and you can feed a lot of people relatively quickly while they're doing the work to help each other sustain themselves through the next winter.
Awesome. We used to have these things in college. They were called beer blasts, and we would basically fence off our yard at the fraternity, and you'd pay admission to come in. You'd bring your own alcohol, and then we would slow roast it. We'd have some guy that came out of the woods, with his smoke, and we'd sit there all night long, roasting the pig over the fire. It was awesome. You're listening to the Marc McMain Show. Bob Furr filling in for Jeff Hood, who normally fills in for Mark on Tuesdays. We are here with Trey Wellborn, who is co-founder of Georgia Barbecue Trails, as well as assistant professor of history at Georgia College and State University in Milledgeville. We are going to take a quick commercial break, but we want to get right back after that because this conversation, well, it's starting to smoke.
That's right. This segment is marinated in good vibes.
Company is Morgan County's newest 5-star attraction. We offer historic Madison tours year-round, a haunted history experience in the fall, and our Madison Lights Christmas Tour and Mary Maddie Express Adventure for kids have become new holiday traditions. Our private charters add vintage charm to weddings and special occasions aboard a historic trolley by day, party trolley by night. Find us on the Madison Town Square or get on board by visiting madisontrolley.com or calling us at 706-997-1800.
When looking for new shoes, the place to check out is K&D Shoes in Conyers. Family owned and operated for over 30 years, offering one of the largest selection of shoes for men, women, and for the kids. From name brands like Ariat, Rocky, Georgia Boot, Hey Dude, and others. You'll find everything from casual to work boots all under one roof. Be sure to see their great selection of outerwear from name brands like Carhartt, Ariat, and more. Need athletic shoes? Then see their great selection from brands like New Balance, Brooks, Reebok, Hoka, and more. Open Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sunday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's K&D Shoes, 2250 Dogwood Drive in Conyers. Call 770-483-9037. Or to learn more and see their great selection, go to kndshoes.com.
You love your land, and you have plans for it. During Kubota Orange Days, you'll love the great deals on our versatile, reliable lineup, helping you turn dream projects into reality. Visit your Kubota dealer today for the best deals of the year, now through June 30th. 0% financing available, or save up to $5,500 off select compact tractors. Sale ends soon. Stop by your local dealer or go to gokubota.com.
Your local Kubota dealer is Hayes Tractor, located at 545 Highway 11 in Social Circle.
Hey, this is attorney Bart Bitton with Bitton & Bitton. I live and work right here in Monroe, Georgia, and I am proud to serve this area. If you've been hurt in a car accident, you don't need some out-of-town lawyer that treats you like a number. You deserve a local lawyer you can trust, someone who lives here, works here, and takes care of people. So remember this, if you're ever in a car accident, be smart, call Bart. Bitton & Bitton, local lawyers you can trust.
All right, welcome back to the Marc McMain Show here on Real Country, WMOQ 92.3 on your FM dial. Bob Furr filling in for Jeff Hood, who normally fills in for Mark on Wednesdays. Our guest today is Dr. Trey Wellborn, assistant professor of history at Georgia College and co-founder and collaborator in Georgia Barbecue Trails. You can check them out, by the way, at georgiabbqtrails.com. And we are slow cooking our way through all things barbecue. And the question that just came up while we were in the break is, why were children like me and millions of children like me who grew up in the Northeast denied barbecue? Why is barbecue not a thing in New England, the Northeast, and the upper Mid-Atlantic states?
That's a good question. The short answer, I think, would be so much of the barbecue tradition as it emerges in the South is one tied to the presence of enslaved Africans and what they're bringing to the table in terms of flavor palette and seasoning techniques and cooking techniques. And so combine those with the older native cooking techniques that are present in other parts of the Americas. And then especially the European domesticated animals. Just there's far more of them because it's such an agricultural economy in a way that's just not as pronounced up north. So there is barbecue, and you can see barbecue referenced in some early colonial documents in New England and New York, but it doesn't become part of the communal tradition in the same way, and it sort of phases out as urbanization and industrialization really become more prominent there than they were in the South.
And it occurs to me, it also has to do with the people who settled there, right? Because, where I come from was settled by the Dutch, the Germans, and so maybe not the same type of, England known for its bland foods and such. And one of the things that's always struck me as interesting since moving through the South is how much spicier the food is here. Across the board, people make food much spicier. You would think the opposite would be true, right? Wouldn't you want the spicy food to warm you up in the cold north versus here in the blistering hot south? So that's always struck me as interesting. So a few minutes ago, we were talking about the barbecue battlefield, and that's one of my favorite things about barbecue is how passionate people get about it. What are some of the more interesting barbecue rules or codes or guidelines that you've encountered?
The biggest one, and this is where John Shelton Reed, who's done probably 30, 40 years of work on barbecue and defining what it is, what it isn't, is really kind of the dominant voice in this conversation. But the biggest one is how you prepare the meat. Beyond that, it's what meat you're preparing. So Texas people think barbecue is beef, right? But if you move east and along the Atlantic seaboard, especially in the Carolinas and Georgia, Virginia, when you say barbecue, you don't have to explain that it's pork barbecue, right? You only need the adjective pork barbecue when you move outside of the Carolinas and Georgia and Virginia. Those are the two biggest ones. And then to me, whether to sauce or not sauce, that's a big part of that is tied to the Texas beef pork divide. But it's also sub-regional, Carolinians, largely due to Lutheran Germanic communities in the interior of South Carolina in particular, mustard sauce emerges there to a degree that it doesn't emerge elsewhere. So there's a historical root to that flavor profile becoming a preference. And it's all of the battlegrounds, battle lines have some sort of root like that.
You're listening to the Marc McMain Show here on Real Country 92.3. We are talking about the battlefield that is barbecue here with Trey Wilburn, co-founder of Georgia Barbecue Trails. So honestly, I think my favorite barbecue meat is smoked turkey. Should I just keep that to myself? Do I walk into the party and say, "Hey, I like the smoked turkey," and they're like, "Who invited the Yankee?" Do I need to keep that to myself?
No, my Thanksgiving turkey is smoked. It's been smoked every year now for about a decade.
But does that make it barbecue? Great point here. So if you smoke your Thanksgiving turkey, does that necessarily make it barbecue?
This is one of those things that you get people's dander up I think so. I think as long as you're smoking it the right way, over wood, indirectly, it counts. As far as I think smoked mullet, which is a major tradition along the coast, the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic coast in Georgia and Florida, that's barbecue. To me, barbecue is a pretty broad table.
This is the very first time that I've ever been tempted to say, "Let's take some calls, Chastity." I would love to see the phone lines light up right now to hear what people have to say.
I think I would say smoked turkey. I don't know if I would consider that barbecue unless you added some sweet sauce, like some sweet barbecue sauce or some mustard barbecue sauce. Then I would say, along with the hamburger bun and some corn on the cob or something, then you may call that a barbecue, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, you can bring your barbecue game to me right now, but don't dare try to bring the corn on the cob game to me, because I will tell you right now, Northeast corn, and I talked to Lee Nunn about this, and he told me that, I'm sorry, what you people have down here, to me, cow corn. You get yourself a white, crispy, white corn like it is sweet, delicious. So look, you can judge me all you want about my smoked turkey and push your mustard sauce on me, but don't bring the corn and the cob game to me, because that one I'm drawing the line on that one.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that. So bring us some corn on the cob.
Believe me. So it's funny.
Put it on the grill?
The last time I went to New York, my carry-on bag was a box of corn Davenport corn from where I grew up.
What you like?
So listen, I'm looking at this big table of barbecue in front of me, and it's not just meats, right? There's okra, there's baked beans, there's macaroni and cheese. The sides have emerged as part of the barbecue tradition. How did that happen? Tell us, take us on a little sidetrack here into sides.
So, honestly, the earliest sides at a barbecue, probably from the 18th century through most of the 19th century, would have been fairly minimal. And it would have been the parts of the hog that you were kind of considered lesser, and you would group them all together and you'd cook them with other things on hand. So that's how Brunswick stew emerges, right? That's how hash and rice, barbecue hash, that's kind of the South Carolina version of Brunswick stew. That's how that emerges. You season these lesser cuts of meat that you don't want to present, but you make them into something presentable. So it's a stew pot tradition. Later, it's really not until the commercialization of barbecue around the turn of the 20th century, and certainly by mid the 1940s, 50s, that sides, as we come, this buffet of different sides really becomes an expectation with barbecue. And you still see that in some of the older hole-in-the-wall barbecue places. They do what they do. It's stew and Q. You might, and a piece of bread, whether it's cornbread or white bread or a bun, and that's it. This is what we do. If you don't want that, go somewhere else. But it's become more and more common to have a larger offering of sides, collard greens. So kind of incorporating the restaurant model.
Interesting, and I'm glad that it unfolded that way, because sides are a lot of the fun of barbecue. So in preparing for this interview, I'm reminded of a movie I watched a long time ago. It's called The Right Stuff, and it's about America's Mercury astronauts and the very first space program before the Apollo program. And there's a famous scene where all the astronauts are taken to Texas, and I'm pretty sure they're in the Astrodome. The timing would be right. It's this vast venue, and they got this guy playing Lyndon Johnson, right? And he's like, and here they are, America's Mercury astronauts. And the whole thing is built around this giant Texas barbecue that they're having in the Astrodome with the Mercury astronauts. How has barbecue woven itself into America's history, culture, and DNA?
There's a great book by a journalist and barbecue historian, food historian really, named Jim Auchmuty, called Smokelore, that's all about that. The how barbecue becomes such an ingrained part of communal events. So July 4th celebrations, electoral campaigns, especially in the South, are almost always centered. One, out of logistical necessity. If you want a lot of people to come and hear your message, one, you want to feed them. And two, you want to feed them efficiently. And barbecue is a great way to feed a lot of people. It's an inherently communal cooking process. You're producing it at a large scale. And so it becomes an ingrained expectation in a lot of these communal public political events. Really, by the late 18th century and throughout the 19th century into the 20th. So Lyndon Johnson, that's a great example of a very long history of political barbecues in particular. And he did it in particular Texas style, right? But that, you read any newspaper article about any politician campaigning, stumping on the campaign, and a barbecue is going to come up.
It's interesting. There's a little bit of a mix here in barbecue, because let's face it, I'm not doing a show on pasta. You know what I mean? Like, it's really a unique food. And if you think about it, barbecue's evolution, it's kind of a combination of necessity being the mother of invention, right? So I'm back in the 1800s. I got to feed a lot of people. I can cook one pig and feed a lot of people. And then since I'm doing that, I might as well see what I can do with it. And so that's when the art kind of comes into it. So it's kind of like what we've been talking about on Tuesdays, going back to the roots of the story to see how things evolved and it all starts to make great sense. When we come back from the commercial break, I want to get into Georgia Barbecue Trails and what you got going on there and how people can use it. I checked out the site, got some great videos. But we're going to take a quick commercial break here. You're listening to the Marc McMain Show on Real Country 92.3. Bob Furr filling in for Jeff Hood, who normally fills in for Mark on Wednesdays. Our conversation is about barbecue. We're going to step away from the table for a short commercial break.
The Madison Trolley Company is Morgan County's newest 5-star attraction. We offer historic Madison tours year-round, a haunted history experience in the fall, and our Madison Lights Christmas Tour and Mary Maddie Express Adventure for kids have become new holiday traditions. Our private charters add vintage charm to weddings and special occasions aboard a historic trolley by day, party trolley by night. Find us on the Madison Town Square or get on board by visiting madisontrolley.com or calling us at 706-997-1800.
Ready to grow your small business and reach thousands of new customers? Say hello to Town Values Magazine, formerly MTM Shopper, proudly serving the community for 22 years. Every month, thousands of magazines are mailed directly to homes in Walton, Oconee, Barrow, Rockdale, Newton, Gwinnett, and beyond to further expand your reach. Our magazine is packed with valuable coupons and services offered, helping families save money while supporting the community they love. We specialize in local direct marketing that works, building your brand, driving sales, and connecting you with the customers who matter most. Plus, we're online at townvalues.com and on Facebook and Instagram, giving your business even more exposure in print and digital. Ready to reserve your space in the next edition? Call Liliana at 770-267-6650. Town Values Magazine. Local, trusted, powerful. Helping businesses grow and families save.
I'm former Congressman Jody Heiss, and we have a critical runoff election coming up on June 16th, and I want to urge you to get out and vote for Marc McMain for State Senate. Marc is a solid and trusted conservative. He'll defend our constitutional rights, support law enforcement, and fight for Georgia families. But dark money groups are now attacking Marc because they know he is the true conservative in this race. So don't stay at home, and let's all keep the main thing the McMain thing. Paid for by Marc for Georgia Incorporated.
Make sure your diesel is ready for every season by stopping in at Leadfoot Diesel. Their technicians have many years of combined experience to keep your Cummins, Power Stroke, and Duramax running the way it should. Plus, they can improve fuel mileage, perform upgrades, AC repair, and they offer tires, wheels, lift kits, and more. Diesel owners from all over the country trust Leadfoot Diesel, 320 Mayfield Drive in Monroe. Stop in or go to leadfootdiesel.com.
And welcome back to a very tasty episode of the Marc McMain Show. Bob Furr filling in for Jeff Hood, filling in for Marc today on Wednesday with a conversation about all things barbecue with Dr. Trey Wellborn, Assistant Professor of History at Georgia College and State University and co-founder of Georgia Barbecue Trails. Now, you can find Georgia Barbecue Trails, which that's what we're going to get into right now, across the board, website, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media platforms. It's Georgia, spelled out the word Georgia, BBQ, and then the word trails. So .com for the website, and that's how you can search it on the others. So, Trey, tell us more about Georgia Barbecue Trails. What is it? Why is it? How did it get started? What are the goals? Educate us.
So we conceived of the site as an educational site and sort of an online archive for historical documentation. That was the idea. What we didn't want it to be, and I think we have this in the on the about page, we didn't want it to be a food blog or a foodie site. So we're not evaluating the barbecue itself in terms of how it tastes, what we like, what we don't like. If you're looking for that we're providing the context and the location and the stories behind the barbecue, and then we're leaving it to the people who want to make their own trail to go try these places and have these experiences to judge for themselves whether they like the barbecue or it's like, that's not for me, that's not how my granddaddy made it, I don't like it. that's your prerogative. So that was kind of the idea behind it, to not be so much a Food Network site, but more of a historical site that also enabled you to try new things.
So when I went to the site, let's break down what people are going to find there. And one of the first things you find is a bunch of videos and articles. And I just noticed that the very first videos that popped up were called Women in Barbecue, right? So let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what are the videos about? And let's talk about that subject exactly, women in barbecue, because I'm guessing back in 1863, it wasn't women out back smoking the pig, right?
No, at least not primarily. They were always there behind the scenes, doing a lot of the prep work, and
while the men got the glory, right?
Yes, generally speaking. That's kind of especially the way these barbecue events and the food would have been described in newspapers and things like that. In personal correspondence, it's usually whoever's hosting the event, whoever's paying for the event, not necessarily the black labor or the female labor that's going into the actual production of the centerpiece of the event. But so that was the capturing that, which has become more and more common. Sort of female pitmasters and female entrepreneurs in Georgia and really across the South. There are more and more women pitmasters, and so it was that mini documentary series was a way to capture some of what we thought were the most interesting stories. So we talked with Smokey's barbecue owner outside of Savannah in Garden City, Tammy Woodward, who she kind of took over this place from her father. Very typical story. It's a family restaurant, and she had business training, restaurant business training, corporate business training, and said, I want to do this. But she learned the skill, the technique of actually making barbecue from her father. So it was a continuing family and local community tradition, but also bringing her expertise away from that community, away from that tradition to the table. So it was a really interesting story.
So we hear this recurring theme of family within barbecue. We're talking about the map of all the barbecue joints. Is there a community of barbecue? Like, I imagine there's a lot of competition, but here's why I asked the question. It was really interesting to me. In bringing in food today, I didn't want to play any favorites, right? I like Crows. I like Brookshire. They offer different experiences, and I love them both, right? I was a little hesitant about, how are they going to feel about being in, on the show combined. And it was both we support each other, especially the folks at Crows are like, Brookshire's new. We want to see him succeed. What do you find in the barbecue community? Are they more competitive or are they more collaborative?
It is a very collaborative community by and large. There are barbecue competitions where they pit, their particular style.
Pit. I see what you did there.
Yeah, you like that? Or they pit what they're doing against each other and try to get recognition for being the best or better. But in the day-to-day, week-to-week, year-to-year operation, they understand how hard it is to make true Q. And so they're very... most of them are very tied to communities, a lot of very similar family backgrounds and stories, and so there's a lot of collaboration and mutual support. One of the videos we did on Jenica Gilmore in Vanna, Georgia, Vanna Country Barbecue, she told us about, in 2021 when meat prices went through the roof, it was hard it was hard for her to keep up with demand and keep costs down, and so she was able to go through one of her technically competitors up the street and was like, oh, well, you should try this guy, his rates are lower. And so that kind of thing is very common. It comes up all the time, and we're talking to these pitmasters, and I think that's one of the things that makes barbecue great is it is inherently communal, and it fosters a community spirit.
Yeah, this struck me as an interesting topic, but I didn't realize how interesting it was until we actually got into it here today. There's just so much, to the story. You're listening to the Marc McMain Show. Bob Furr filling in for Jeff Hood today, who normally fills in for Marc on Wednesdays. We're talking with our guest, Dr. Trey Wellborn, Assistant Professor of History at Georgia College, co-founder and collaborator of Georgia Barbecue Trails. And right now we're talking about Georgia Barbecue Trails, a great resource for all your barbecue needs and desires. desires. You can find it across the board at Georgia BBQ Trails. So you mentioned best, right? Who has the best? On your site, you make it very clear we're not going to review or pass judgment. Why did you make that decision?
Because we wanted it to be about the context and the stories surrounding these places, and for the actual evaluation of food to be up to individual tastes. So we came to these stories, to these communities, to these families with a desire to kind of capture their stories for a broader audience, for a general public, for posterity, because they tell us something about the history of those communities, of those families, of the state, of the country. And so that was the purpose behind it. And so it's also a lot easier to get access and to have those conversations if you're coming in saying, look, we're not in the business of promoting or denigrating, right? We're just here to tell your story.
You don't want to be the guy. Is it Dave Portnoy with the pizza out in front of the place?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
all right.
It's a much easier way to get in and have those meaningful conversations.
So no reviews or judgments. Does that mean you're not allowed to tell me any of your favorites?
Oh, we've got favorites. Everybody's got.
I'm gonna run down the list here. Answer as you feel comfortable. What is your favorite type of barbecue?
So I'm from South Carolina, so I like a little bit of mustard seed in my barbecue sauce. But when I say barbecue, I mean pork barbecue. And I think the best pork barbecue is what I grew up eating, which was whole hog barbecue, which is harder to find now than it used to be. You'll still find individuals that make it, but by and large, it's a really hard thing to do commercially. Probably the most famous whole hog barbecue commercial establishment is in Scott's Barbecue and Rodney Scott. He's got places everywhere now in Atlanta, Charleston, I think Nashville maybe. But he started in Hemingway, South Carolina, which is a little tiny town. You have no business going to it unless you're going to eat barbecue at Scott's Barbecue. But that to me that's the essence of barbecue, because that's what I grew up eating.
So Carolina, mustard,
and I'm a hash and rice guy.
Okay, and I was going to say, now let's go to your favorite side. What's your favorite side? Hash and rice?
Hands down. And it's an acquired taste because it's a true hash and rice are kind of it's like liver and onions, and it's the bits of the pork that you're not pulling when you pull it off you dump all the rest of it into the pot and you cook it for a really long time with potatoes and onions and serve it over rice. It's delicious, but if it's done right. But
I trust you. So what about dry rub versus wet rub?
I'm more of a dry rub guy.
Okay.
I don't like to get messy when I eat. So wet ribs to me just it's more work than it's work.
Now, I'm sorry for my ignorance here again, Yankee smoked turkey, but is wet rub different than sauce, or are we talking about the same thing there?
You're saucing it, but you put the sauce on as you're smoking, so the sauce kind of glazes.
Gotcha.
And caramelizes a little bit on the meat.
I say both.
Yeah. If you give me some wet ribs, I'm gonna eat them to the bone. But
all right, I got two cool questions. How about you, Chastity? Like, give me yours. Favorite type of barbecue?
Oh, I love a sweet sauce barbecue, pork barbecue, and always a side of potato salad. I feel like it's a traditional kind of have to have a good cold potato salad.
So I think this is going to expose me as a Yankee. So smoked turkey would be my favorite. I do want the sauce on it. I am sauce agnostic. I will tell you that, though. I'll take the vinegar. I'll take the mustard, the sweet, the hot. I don't care. I'm across the board. No preference there. The side would be good old New York Davenport sweet corn on the cob, 100% there. Though I love me some baked beans, like those fat mat baked beans, the rum baked beans they have, they're really good. All right, so I got a question for you. What is the most significant event in the history of barbecue, or in barbecue's impact on history or part in history?
I usually point, especially in Georgia, but I think really for barbecue in the South, especially as a national food relate, like how the nation thinks of the South and its food, and associating barbecue with the South. The 1895, it's often kind of abbreviated as the Cotton States Exposition, but it was the Cotton States and International Exposition in 1895 in Atlanta. It's where Booker T. Washington famously gives his, send down your bucket speech. But at that event, which attracted hundreds of thousands of people from across the country and even across the globe, Sheriff John Calloway from Wilkes County, Georgia, served barbecue, what he called Southern barbecue, and it was a very particular style. It was pork barbecue over a massive pit. There are pictures of this in-ground pit with an apparatus to raise and lower the rack with the hogs on it and to flip the hogs when you needed to flip them and mop them. So it's a massive operation. He's feeding thousands of people, and he's using a very particular, it's kind of a red pepper vinegar sauce that becomes associated with that Southern barbecue, that's Georgia barbecue, in the mind of the nation for much of the early 20th century.
Wow.
People eat Southern barbecue. That's what they expect, especially people from outside the region. And so I think it had a massive effect, not only on that national perception of barbecue in the South, but also really led people to start to commercialize barbecue production. We can make money doing this.
Gotcha.
And so you start to see roadside shacks, barbecue shacks that take advantage of the mobility that comes with the automobile, and then eventually you see restaurants crop up in these communities, often in places where there had been roadside shacks that are accessible, they have a reputation, and they build a permanent structure to try to attract people to that community. And so that's kind of how early barbecue restaurants take root.
All right, last question. You got 2 sentences. An alien from outer space lands on Earth, and you've got to describe barbecue to them in 2 sentences. What are you telling them?
It's fire smoked, best thing you'll put in your mouth.
It didn't even. I'll name that tune in 1 sentence. So, well, you have been listening to a really fun edition of the Marc McMain Show. Special thank you going out to Crow's Barbecue and Brookshire Barbecues in Madison for lunch and for their support. Again, you'll find Crow's at 1329 Eatonton Road in Madison, or at crowsbarbecue.com, and Brookshire at 270 West Washington Street in Madison, or at brookshirebarbecue.com. Thanks to Trey Wilborn, our guest. You'll find him at the Georgia College and State University of Milledgeville, or at Georgia Barbecue Trails. That's GeorgiaBBQTrails.com on the website, or Georgia BBQ Trails across social media platforms. Of course, as always, thanks to one and only Chastity Stewart for manning the controls today.
Thank you, Bob, for the wonderful guest and the wonderful barbecue.
Yeah, it was a fun
Delicious.
day. Well, it's a fun day. Best wishes to Jeff Hood for a speedy recovery. I'll be back next Tuesday with Chapter 2 of Tuesdays 250. Will be going from one of the greatest American history coincidences and the march to Civil War all the way up to westward expansion. Until then, keep it real, country.
That's right. Until next time, keep it smoking, keep it kind, and stay saucy, Georgia.
That sounds like you should go on a T-shirt.